Hey everyone, welcome back to Won't Fix. Today I'm talking to Craig Silverman. Craig's an award-winning journalist who spent more than 15 years researching and reporting on the manipulation of our information environment. He's currently the co-founder of Indicator, a media outlet that exposes digital deception and teaches digital investigative and OSINT techniques. So before Indicator, Craig was a national reporter at ProPublica, where he focused on investigating digital platforms and online manipulation. Before that, he was the media editor for BuzzFeed News, where he pioneered innovative approaches to exposing digital deception, disinformation, and media manipulation. I'm really glad that Craig can join us today. I've interacted with him on several occasions over the years. You know, when I was at Facebook, he wrote several articles that we commented on. He's a great journalist and also a great teacher of helping people understand what's behind the information content that they're seeing online. Really excited for you to hear this conversation. And as always, please send us your feedback. Hey, Craig, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So it's been a while. Actually, it hasn't been that long. So we've chatted every now and then for, it seems like a long time.
A long time, yeah.
When was the first time we chatted? Was it when I was at Facebook or was it some other time?
It was when you were at Facebook. I did a lot of reporting on scams and fraud on Facebook, and in particular, people doing, scammy ads or nasty affiliate things. And so I feel like it maybe one of the first times that we actually got on a call might have been in I think 2018 when I did a story about a San Diego marketing agency that seemed from the outside to be a normal kind of digital marketing agency, but was actually running like tens of millions of dollars worth of, celebrity scam affiliate ads that would, people would click and then they would be enrolled in an auto billing type thing.
Yeah. The number of weird, crazy scams out there just continues to amaze me. But also, I think it's one of the last, I talked to Asaf Kipnis recently, and he was saying a lot of it is just the same playbook, just, with different optimizations and different tools and so on. So I also wonder how much is new out there and how much is just kind of re-rolling some of the old scam tactics once again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of fundamental playbooks that still work, but the piece that is really kind of different is just obviously the internet sort of made it possible to reach victims in many different places a lot easier than doing direct mail. And then really over the last couple of years, the element of AI enabled it possible to small teams to really scale up the amount of messages, the amount of marketing, the amount of ads that they were doing. But also there was kind of an awful sort of human innovation, which was, the scam compounds in Cambodia and elsewhere in the region where they realized if we run a job scam and then we recruit, hundreds or thousands of people and put them into forced labor. So they're actually the human machines sending out all of these messages and putting people into our funnel. This was just a really brutal, awful marriage of the sort of technological innovation of they built systems, they ran these things like tech companies in a lot of ways, but then they brought in basically human trafficking and slavery to just get the mass human element of it. And that, I think that is the most kind of astonishing, awful thing that we've seen. But it also, you can be a small group of people and potentially steal a lot of money. And it's just never ending now.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And the scale is immense and also it's pretty tricky. The transnational nature of some of this stuff is very, very challenging as well. So just to back up, tell us a little bit about, I've been following what you're doing with Indicator Media and would love to know, you to share more with everyone about what you're doing. I think from my mind, a lot of what you're doing that's really cool and interesting is how you're giving people tools to try to find some of the things going on the internet and picking apart some of those same scams and other things that, might be trying to deceive people. So maybe just set a little context of the kinds of things you guys are doing and how you're going about it, and then a little bit about how you ended up with, deciding to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my background is I'm a journalist, but I've also at times been part of startups in journalism. And actually, one of my first jobs was at a technology company called Zero Knowledge Systems that was building like a private overlay for the internet. And this is one of the crazy things about it is one of the senior engineers at that company was Adam Back, who recently was the subject of a New York Times article claiming that he is Satoshi, the creator of Bitcoin. I didn't know Adam really well there. And I just sort of, found a niche around digital investigative work. And in particular, looking at all the different ways our digital environment is being, abused, used for deception. So did a lot of early reporting on disinformation and sort of the manipulation of platforms like Facebook to, spread false and misleading content at scale. And so I over the previous sort of 10 years, I started BuzzFeed Canada, and then I was the media editor where I did a lot of that sort of disinformation reporting. And then I joined ProPublica, the nonprofit investigative newsroom in 2021. And I worked there for 4 years. And then basically almost exactly a year ago, I quit ProPublica because I just felt like there was kind of something else I should be doing. And that became Indicator, which is a site, a publication I run with my partner, Alexios Manzarlis. And it's, so we do investigations into what we call digital deception, which is like a broad umbrella term that we've chosen because we don't just do like disinformation. We don't just do scams. We're interested in fake engagement. We're interested in anything, any kind of way the digital environment is being manipulated to deceive people or other elements of deception. And, one part of it is reporting and investigations. But the other part is, I've spent a long time training people in newsrooms and other, people in NGOs about how to do what's often called OSINT or digital investigative work of, gathering available material online, digging into that and producing investigative work from it. And I felt like we have a real challenge in my world of journalism that the skills are still not where they need to be. And also there is a growing amount of people around the world who are really into OSINT and trying to learn OSINT. And I thought, I've been running this sort of free newsletter for a while and, was focused on tools and tips and techniques because I couldn't do anything else there. I had a full-time job. And I just felt like there was an opportunity to build something where we did investigations, but then we explained to people how we did them. We taught them how to do them. We stayed up to date and helped keep investigators skills sharp by basically tracking all the crazy amount of new tools and techniques because it's a burgeoning, exploding area. And we basically built a paid member business around that. So, for example, when we publish an investigation, there's the investigation, but at the end of it, we publish what we call the info box, where we actually have a bulleted list of like, here's everything I did to put this investigation together. Here are the tools I used. And then, I publish very deep dive guides. I give a monthly workshop. And so I just felt like we're in this, like we just talked about with scams, we're in this moment where deception is not only kind of widespread, it's become industrialized, with things like scam compounds or large scale transnational organizations intersection with organized crime. But the other part of it that's really just been over the last couple of years is it's kind of becoming legitimized. You have some VCs in Silicon Valley, like Andreessen Horowitz invested in a TikTok bot farm, a company called Double Speed. Like that's crazy. Nobody's ever put $1 million into a bot farm before at a major VC. And I do a lot of reporting on kind of undisclosed marketing, where this is like one of the playbooks that a lot of sort of tech startups and other kinds of companies are using of just like hiring tons of really young people to create new TikTok and Instagram accounts and have them post hooks and relatable content without ever disclosing that they're actually being paid by the company to do this. And so, so for me, it's like this sense of urgency and mission that we need to be getting these skills and spreading them as far as possible, but also like, I need to be digging into this stuff, all the time and publishing as much as possible. And so, yeah, we're doing journalism and then we're teaching people, whether they're journalists or not, how to do these investigations.
Yeah, you bring up this the undisclosed, and I think you wrote a really interesting piece about it, about this kind of get paid to watch TikTok videos, which is kind of a related issue, but we'll get back to that. I wanted to also talk a bunch about affiliate marketing. It's kind of one of the very interesting topics. But I think that I just saw a lot of some reporting about clipping, about essentially undisclosed promotions. I have a friend who is in the ad tech space and gets very frustrated because there's a lot of quote unquote marketing influencers posting, even in the B2B space, posting about how great some ad platform is or something else. And They appear to be, undisclosed paid promoters of these services. How widespread is this problem? Like, it seems like the Federal Trade Commission and other folks have really have not been enforcing anything in this area. It does. I mean, I even remember that, people used to get upset. Okay, you need to say sponsored ad or something, and then the amount of disclosure just seems to have gotten less and less over time.
Yeah, so there's the widespread piece, and then there's the enforcement piece, and obviously they're connected, because if enforcement is there, it's not going to be as widespread because people are going to be worried. And so, in terms of how widespread it is, there are marketplaces now where you as a brand could go in and say, I have, $100,000 budget or a $2 million budget, and here's my content, and boom, if it's clipping, they can take it, clip it, put it out there, and then you pay people based on the amount of views they get. And there is almost never disclosure on that. I mean, X just recently introduced a paid partnership label, which is crazy that they only just reintroduced it. Like, it's like the law, but they, didn't do it for a long time. So again, that gives you an indication on enforcement. So that whole world of clipping, like, a lot of it has been around sort of like live streamers. Like, they have really pioneered this model where they'll live stream for hours and hours, and then they are basically incentivizing people to go through that live stream, pull out the most potentially viral moments, and then they pay them to help make them viral. And it just gets in people's feeds like it's, look at this crazy clip from Clavicular or whatever streamer, and you think it's just somebody who's a fan or whatever, but no, it's actually part of a marketing campaign. So like, that's that clipping world. I mean, you can go and you can run these campaigns. Mr. Beast has a clipping company. There's several platforms that are self-serve on that. And then the other one is there are companies that do what they call UGC, or organic marketing, which is, you've got a product, you've got a brand, here's, and you can hire them, and they either have a roster of existing creators, or they'll go and they'll hire people that fit the type of person that is good for your product. And they just do kind of like mass scale industrialized posting, where they come up with a bunch of hooks and frames for the posts, and they test them out like crazy. So like the people who are hired on these campaigns, they might be doing one or several posts a day, every day for a long period of time. And as soon as something hits and goes viral, if there's like 20 creators on that campaign, all 20 of them will be told, use this exact frame, this slideshow, this whatever, and do it on your accounts. Because platforms like TikTok they're not like punishing people for duplicative content. And so you will have a network of dozens and dozens and dozens of paid creators who have accounts that do not disclose they are working for a company. They just say, I'm a student, or I'm this. And they will just crank out like variations of the exact same frame or post. And in some cases, like I've edited together videos of them literally reading the same script. And so this is like, we're talking about billions and billions and billions of views that they are getting from this. I did a piece where I looked at, I think it was like 7 or 8 of these UGC campaigns where each of them had been in the hundreds of millions or billions of views, and they are still ongoing. And, almost none of the companies ever respond to me. Some of them would respond and say like, these are our rules. This is how we do it. But the rules that they would explain that they have for their campaign are not actually what the FTC or the platforms themselves require, which is crazy. So they're basically telling me like, yeah, we're not in line with either of their rules, but this is what we do for our brand or for our clients. And so it's like industrial scale. And at the end of the day, what it means is the average person on TikTok or Instagram, especially, their feeds are, whatever percentage, depending on who they are and what target market they might be in, their feeds are just increasingly getting filled with or like sprinkled with posts that look like they are from real, relatable people that do not have paid labels, that do not disclose in the content itself that this is a sponsored post. And it all looks organic. And that's why they call it organic UGC. They're like, it's user-generated content, it's organic. But by definition, organic content is not paid, and they're paying people to create organic content. So we've manufactured organic content in this world. And I've gone to the FTC every time I've done one of these stories. They typically don't comment on things in general, but there has been nothing brought that I've seen about clipping, about undisclosed UGC campaigns. They have done nothing to date. And the platforms themselves, when they respond to me, they say what their rules are. and they maybe sometimes they add a label after the fact when I reach out, or in some cases accounts have either been removed or deleted, but there is no mass scale enforcement by the platforms or by the FTC. So it is open season is basically what the deal is today.
Well, I mean, I think not to take the other side of that, but I do think that it's really hard to, these off-platform payments. I mean, anything could be happening behind the scenes. It's pretty hard for them to do any kind of technical enforcement of this. They really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I do think, though, the duplication of content, there's probably some timing things they could do. There's, some things that would be, this looks suspicious, or, but I do think it's tricky. It's tricky to try to find that stuff automatically. And so that's why I think maybe a lot of it is just reactive. That said, unless the enforcing agencies or folks in different countries are actually going to get aggressive, this is just going to keep going on. And I also think, like, the other thing you kind of mention indirectly, but I think has become much worse or much more effective, depending on how you want to look at it, is that the feeds kind of pivot so much more quickly these days on all of the platforms, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever. If you start showing interest in some topic, you'll get a lot more content around that thing. Like, as an example, I'm in London right now. I ran the London Marathon, yay. But, my feed is entirely London Marathon, whatever. It's like completely different than it was a couple of days ago. So I think this is just something that makes the impact of this kind of, questionably sourced information just far worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think TikTok has really changed the game in terms of how their algorithm worked. And when companies like Meta and others saw this idea that it's like, it actually doesn't matter if you have a big following. TikTok is like this is one of the things that these marketers say is they're like, you don't need to be on the platform for months. You don't need to be on the platform with lots of followers. You could literally create an account, warm it up with some regular posts, and then get an absolute viral banger that's like 5 million, 10 million views within your first few weeks of posting, because the algorithm is just trying to find anything that it can serve to people and that they'll like. And I think Instagram has moved in that direction as well in terms of how it works. And you do have this weird thing as a user, like I experience it on X, where I literally like expand or hover on one post about one topic, and suddenly my feed is just like totally sprinkled with things related to that topic. And I'm like, I wasn't that interested, please dial it down, I find it's just like, it is like such a hair trigger on these algorithms. But you can also make that work for you. Like my X feed is like the For You feed on X is just all like skeezy marketers talking about what they're doing. So it works for me in that sense, but I don't enjoy it personally for satisfaction. But I think you raise this sort of enforcement challenge on this, which is like, what are the reliable signals that you as an internal team could build and then scale up to detect it at scale? And I think that is a challenge. Like, there's no question about it, because at the same time, the strategy that I would suggest that they take is, number one, these companies and the marketers and the agencies they hire talk about this publicly. They are boasting about it. You could literally just go and find companies who have published their own case study of what they're doing. And you could simply just pick out an example, pick out one that is running it at a very large scale, pick out an agency that's running at a very large scale, take what they have publicly shared, and then trivially, for internal investigators, you could build a case and basically just take down one company as an example. And I think if people knew that and saw it in the industry, and you said, we removed them because they were doing X, Y, Z, this violates our policies, we also have concerns it might be, violating FTC rules or whatever, I think everybody in the industry would be like, oh crap. And so I think like the scaling part is hard because, they're not disclosing things, they're not putting the tags on or whatever, but but I think the duplicative posts, like once they find an angle that works, everybody is doing it and it's all over the feed. And I think arguably there's a really, aside from regulation and all that, the user experience on this is horrible, because when I write these stories, I absolutely get people coming to me and saying, I see that post and variations of it from 10 different creators in my feed all the time. And it's driving them crazy. They see that like there's this brute force attack on their timeline, and they didn't know they were ads. They just thought it was people copying each other. So yeah, I mean, I think on the enforcement side, I would say like pick one example and make it public, And I think you would actually see people snap into compliance. Whereas, like, I was sat in on a webinar from a company, and this founder of the company talked about how when any post gets, I think it was above 50,000 views or something like that, all of the creators on the campaign get a message saying, hey, we have a banger. And everybody on the campaign goes and comments on that post and says, oh, I do it. I love it. And so they're actually, like, not only is it the sort of the content part of it, but then they're doing engagement farming, which is also against the policies. So, I mean, they're hitting these platforms from so many different levels. So I wish they would just, like, make an example of something, or I wish they would actually just do a communication saying, we're just going to remind everybody what our rules are because we are going to step up enforcement in this area. You actually don't have to step up enforcement. I think if you actually made a public announcement, you would see people change. And I'd like to hear your take on this. Like, so one of the arguments that I make to platforms, if I get a chance to talk to somebody, is like, hey, by the way, like, you're potentially cannibalizing your own ad business by allowing this to happen. Because the reason this works is that it is not an ad. The reason it works is it's not labeled as an ad. It doesn't have any of the platform structure around it of an ad. And so if I'm a marketer and I could go and spend $500,000 on a paid campaign on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever, or I could spend $500,000 on a campaign where none of that has to go through the auction process. None of that is like, oh, is our ad performing well? Is the, price lowering or rising based on performing well or bad? If I can just pay people to brute force attack the algorithm and have them think these aren't ads, that's probably going to perform better. And that's what the marketers who sell these campaigns say. They say this is going to perform better because it's organic. So if you're a platform and you're allowing people to run ads without paying you money on your platform, you are potentially over time cannibalizing your business. And I haven't reached enough people in there to sort of, I don't know what you think about that argument, having worked in a platform, but to me, it's like, this is bad for their business in addition to being potentially unlawful.
Yeah, I think the first version of this was when, organic brand posts got downranked or just essentially disappeared from the platforms like Facebook or Instagram after companies had spent a bunch of money and were upset because they spent this money to get followers and so on. And then it turned out, oh, actually, that got crowded out by the combination of friends and family content and ads. And now what you've been seeing the last couple of years is friends and family content getting crowded out by things that the algorithm thinks is going to be interesting, that unconnected content that no one, to your point about TikTok really being the first to do this. So now you're in this position that you correctly point out where now you have this unconnected, non-business content, which is actually in some cases business content and is actually competing with ads, as opposed to, there's also this unconnected kind of clout getting content like, oh, let me explain this thing from 15 years ago to you in a long series of posts on Threads or whatever it is. It's another variant of this. But yeah, I think eventually, and maybe not even, it won't even take that long. But yes, I would be surprised if data scientists at these companies were not looking at this phenomenon and saying, oh, how much is this cannibalizing ad revenue? How do we reduce this? What are some of the factors and pivots and things? So I have no doubt that they are thinking that way. The real question is like, can they find stuff that reduces one kind of negative behavior without reducing the positive behavior side of it? So that's always the trick, is how do you, thread that needle? How do you communicate to the different actors involved that things are going to change? And then, of course, some of the most sophisticated folks still figure out, ways through that mess. Someone was just posting some content about with this weekend's attempted incident at the correspondence dinner, and if you click through on the page of this thing that this person posted, it's the admins of the page on Facebook. It's 5 admins from Vietnam. So there's still a lot of inauthentic, foreign, clout rising or whatever it is that they're trying to do kinds of engagement. But I think people still don't even realize the tools that exist to fight this stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I think I would imagine they've got to be looking at these signals, because obviously if it's in the business interest, there's like, those arguments are always better. And you would know better than me of making the argument internally, what's going to resonate more. Like if the FTC is doing zero enforcement, Are they in Meta concerned that the FTC is going to come after them? Probably not. Probably not also with the current FTC. But if they look at it and they say like, yeah, this is money that could be spent with us, but now, and the scale of these campaigns are quite large, I think there's a good argument there. And I do think, you sort of keyed on duplicative content. And that is like, of the signals around this stuff, that is basically, I think, one of the best, because they do operate on, when you find, like, literally, again, this is in their playbooks, this is in their webinars. When something works, do it a million times is basically what they say. And so you will have, in some cases, really obvious word for word script kind of stuff going on, or it's just like it's the same series of slideshows with the same hook at the end. And I think that is the opportunity for this sort of automated kind of clustering and detection of like, look, oh, here is, this type of post across dozens or hundreds of accounts, all within a short time frame. And then from there, like, the signals are pretty trivial for any kind of human analyst to look at. They often have the same type of words in their bio. Sometimes they do mention the brand in their bio, but again, that's not actually what the platform rules or the FTC rules are. You have to disclose it in the content itself. And they say it's not even good enough to have it as a hashtag, which I know a lot of creators are like, this is annoying, but these are literally the rules the FTC gave. So yeah, I'm interested to see what might be the thing that actually gets the platforms to sort of just send some kind of a signal out. And I do think the conversation around clipping is reaching, like, a lot of the stuff that I end up on is like, to me, it seems huge because it's being talked about in the communities and people I'm monitoring. But by definition, I'm looking in the early adopters and those kinds of things. Like, that's what I'm trying to find. And it is not part of the larger conversation. And I'm often finding these things and I'm trying to like punch it through to a larger conversation to say like, hey, look at this, and somebody should do something about it. And I feel like the conversation around clipping just in the last like 2 or 3 weeks is starting to get more mainstream. And people are starting to understand like this is manufactured virality. This is part of their marketing strategy. And I'll be interested to see if that sort of triggers anything, whether the FTC decides to talk about clipping or what have you. But as of right now, it's just like, the hands are off the wheel on this. There isn't anything publicly happening. And even when I go to the platforms and send them lists of dozens of accounts, most of them remain online. Sometimes they retroactively apply the paid partnership label to content, but this is content that's already gotten millions of views and its viral moment is gone. And so it's that's not the most effective strategy. But I do hope that there's some way, or, just somebody within 1 or 2 of these platforms of like, let's send out a smoke signal and just scare everybody a little bit. I think that would actually be a little bit effective, to say like, hey, we're paying more attention here. And then everybody on these campaigns is going to be like, oh, okay, what does that mean?
The other label, you bring up labels, the other label that I think is a really interesting one that you probably have some perspectives on is the AI labels. So
yes,
there's so much AI slop out there. It's, and I think we also know from various studies that when people, maybe not the slop where maybe it's obvious, but when people know something is AI generated, they have a more negative view on it than if they're uncertain that it's AI generated. It's just like People have a super negative. So I'm curious what you think of how the various AI labeling efforts are going, or how that, the different like levels of slop that are out there. It seems pretty bad, and I only assume it will get worse. But
yeah, so this is an area actually where we've done 2 sort of what we call audits at Indicator about this. So like the broad sort of piece of it is pretty much every major platform and a lot of the major AI companies, the ChatGPTs and others, have all said, like, we understand that people would like to know if they're looking at something that's AI generated, and we think that disclosure should be there. So they've all committed to like, some metadata standards where if you generate something in, Nano Banana on Gemini and you upload it to Facebook, Facebook should be able to recognize that it's generated with AI and label it so people can see. And so this is basically like, this is the main industry commitment that everybody has made. None of them want to discourage the use of AI because they're all building models and they want it and they want people using it on their platforms, but they all sort of have basically said like, yeah, we agree it should be labeled. And so we've done 2 audits on this where we basically went to several different models. We generated images and videos, checked that the metadata was either in there or not in there. So have they implemented the standard first? And then we would upload it to different platforms. And so, we had to do this matrix of like, okay, we generated this image in ChatGPT. Now we're going to put it on Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, oh, we generated a model with Meta's own, generated image with Meta's model. We put it on Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera. So like the headline is everybody's still doing a pretty bad job of this. And they've all committed to it. There's legislation coming into effect next month in the US that is actually requiring more of this kind of labeling. And so they still have a lot of work to do. They have gotten better. The first time we did the audit, I think the best platform we saw for consistent labeling was Pinterest, which was about, I think, 55%. So only about half of the time when we validated that the metadata was there, Pinterest was properly labeling it. Other platforms were far, far worse. And so what we basically showed was that a bunch of them have not properly implemented the metadata standard for it to be generated and put in the files themselves. And then the larger problem was when you had it and we validated the metadata was there, when you went and uploaded it, the label didn't appear. And so we did our first audit. It was really pretty disappointing. We did a second audit and some of them had improved. But like the craziest thing that happened in both audits was we would generate images with Meta's AI generation model, and then we would upload the image to Instagram and it still wasn't labeled. So it's like, you would expect them to do it best with their own platform. And Meta actually is to this day kind of the most concerning one. And I would say who's doing it best? I would say Google is like the most interesting on this front. Like Pinterest as a platform and LinkedIn as a platform seem to be better at applying the labels. But in terms of who's actually doing cool stuff with labeling, I would have to say Google, because they came out with OSINT ID, which is their own proprietary watermarking technology. So if you generate an image in Gemini, not only is there like supposed to be the C2PA metadata and the IFTF metadata, which, it should be there. But they actually, like, even if someone strips that metadata, which is, as we know, is very trivial to do, super easy. Like literally there are, metadata removal tools out there that will even remove the little Gemini logo that gets put on your images for you. But OSINT ID is watermarking it in an invisible way so that if you take an image and you throw it into Gemini and you say, was this generated using Google's tools, it often will be able to tell you if it was, even if they've stripped the metadata. There are ways to defeat that. There are increasingly tools saying they can remove OSINT ID watermarking. I don't know how effective they are. I haven't done a full scale test, but the state of things is not good. And I think it's, it unfortunately, like if you're a tech industry hater, it fits in the narrative of like, they don't really care. They say they will do things, they don't really do them. It's not like they haven't done anything, but I just wish that they would put the resources into fulfilling this promise to users and to the public that they put in, just a small amount of what they put into building the models. And I think Google is the only one I've seen of the generation companies that has actually said, let's build something new that's actually really, quite good and interesting. So I'll give them props on OSINT ID. I just wish everybody would actually just put a couple more engineers on it for the next 6 months so that it's working properly. Don't starve these teams of people who really want to make this work, of the resources needed to actually implement this. Because I will acknowledge that, like, to do this, if you're on the team at Meta, and you would know this better than me, that is in charge of implementing this, you're your team, but then you have to deal with Instagram, with Facebook, with Messenger, with WhatsApp, and you have to find champions within all of those teams to be like, let's work together to make this work. And I can't imagine there is any incentive for the people on those teams where the priorities from on high is not get this metadata done. The priority on high is what generation tools, engagement, all that ads, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can see what the challenge is, but man, like they got to get their act together.
Yeah, it looks like the trend on some of these folks is, to rely on the community to call out if something is trying to be deceptive. So it's in the comments or add a community note, which, again, like for threads, they ship the community notes as, the alternative to third-party fact checking or whatever it is. So, I don't know how effective that's going to be. But I think, one could also make the argument perhaps there is no technical way for this stuff not to be circumvented or, to strip the metadata or whatever. So you're eventually going to have some community-oriented mechanism to do this. And perhaps that's something they're betting they will make better over time and figure out how to surface the notes and do the right things. But it just, to me, it seems like we're always going to have to be in a state of uncertainty of whether something is true or not from here on into the future.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the reality is like when I go and I give workshops or I give talks to people who are not sort of like journalists or technical people in the area. I mean, the biggest thing I just try to say to them is one, understand this environment is being manipulated. Yes, there's massive amounts of AI generated content. So you just have to have that awareness, but you don't want them to then be completely, just like freaked out and I don't know what to trust and I can't believe anything anymore. And so one of the like really basic skills that I sort of encourage them to have is just patience. Like you don't have to make up your mind about this video or this image right now. You don't have to take any action on it. You don't need to stop scrolling. You don't need to share it. You don't, you could send it to somebody to ask them, if they think this is real. But, so much of it is meant to trigger us into sort of a fight or flight mode, or just to trigger our emotions or our own beliefs and biases. And if you can find a way to train yourself to just have a little more patience and not be carried away with the thing, you actually, that's, it's sort of on a basic sort of approach level is very good. But there's often what happens then is you move into sort of system 2 thinking in your brain rather than the reactive mode of system 1 that we mostly operate in to save like cognition power and all that. And suddenly you're patient and you can actually shift your brain into a different mode and a different mindset where you look at it and suddenly you see it in a different way because you've actually enabled yourself to sort of like mentally and physically pull back. And so, I teach reverse image search. I teach all of these things. But at the end of the day, like if you can't get your mind into an approach of navigating a universe where you do have to understand that there are many different types of manipulation, there's many different deceptive things at any given moment, as well as really good, interesting stuff. If you can't get yourself into a mindset to sort of consume and browse in a way that accommodates for that and gives you the opportunity to pause, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you're able to pause and able to be patient, and then things like, well, I could just search and see what else people are saying about this. I could do a reverse image search on this and see what else might be there. Then you're kind of winning. But it is an extremely difficult information environment for anyone to navigate, and it has nothing to do with education level or intelligence or anything like that. And it's just really tough, and we need to develop new skills, no question.
Yeah, I think the best thing I always tell people when anything looks sketchy is just slowing down. Like take time. You don't be in a rush. Try to reduce the perceived level of urgency if possible. Like that's just one of the key things is just take some time, ask someone else, come back to it in 10 minutes, whatever it is, to slow you down.
And on that level, that's good news, right? Like, because if that's actually powerful, then you can accept the fact that synthetic media detection tools will never be 100% reliable, which is true. They will never be as good as the models. They will never be able to keep up. There will never be perfect metadata. And the metadata itself could be stripped, could be like all of the weaknesses and all of the evasion tactics and adversarial stuff that people will do. The best defense is if you can actually adopt an information consuming mode that enables you to slow down, to pause, to think, and engage thinking. If you can do that, that's actually a meaningful defense. And so when I communicate that, what I'm trying to get people to have is a sense of, power and a way to actually, not give up in this environment, which I think is actually a very easy thing for people to do. And in some cases is actually the goal, is to get folks to conclude like, I don't know what to trust. I don't know what to believe. And that's, you can't really have a good functioning society. You can't have a democratic society in that kind of scenario. And so the thinking piece is really key.
I think it's a really great point. One of the things I think I enjoy about what you've written over the years is, talking about the different incentives of, why is this information being produced? Why am I clicking, being kind of encouraged to click on these bits of information? So you wrote something a few months ago about people getting paid or being told they would get paid to watch TikTok videos and so on. And you talked a little bit about, you did a whole bunch of investigation about who are the entities behind that and affiliate networks and so on. So maybe using that as a framework, I wanted to talk a little bit about affiliates and affiliate networks. So, maybe just walk us through that story a little bit at a high level, and then we can talk more about affiliates.
Oh, affiliates. It's funny, like you spoke to Asaf recently, and I shared some of my findings with Asaf, and he did some work on that as well. And when I shared him my initial findings on that, he was like, "Oh, it's affiliate marketing." He said something like the worst people on earth, or like, the most awful thing on earth.
Always comes back to affiliates.
This is it. Like, if you are encountering something sensationalist, manipulative, or whatever online, it not always, but there's a good chance. And so in this case, what I saw on TikTok was a lot of posts. Some of them had gone really viral, where there was actually typically a video in it telling people that, hey, there's settings in your TikTok settings to actually get into a TikTok program where they are paying you to watch videos. And the video showed people like turning on the toggle. And so, so that really caught people's attention because, of course, there are many very heavy users of TikTok who believe they could earn a lot of money if they were paid to watch videos. And one of the reasons why this worked, aside from it's an easy money scheme, which is, we said scams have always been around. That's the oldest one there is the easy money scheme, right? But it also works because everybody knows that TikTok does pay creators. They know that people who have a certain amount of followers can get into a creator program and get paid based on engagement and views with their content. And so because TikTok pioneered that, this scam works. And so they would have the video, and then there would be a URL that was either like in the account's bio, or they would share it in the comments because people were like, how, as comments, and they would reply to them. And one of the things that these folks did to actually, resist, TikTok recognizing what was going on was they would often share the URL as an image in a comment. So TikTok, on the enforcement side, TikTok couldn't automatically scan for a list of known malicious domains. And at the end of the day, what would happen is you would type in that domain or click on it. You would go there. It would be a landing page that would tell you, yes, there's a program. You can earn money. Here's how it works. Click here to get started. And then from there, you are sent through a series of a bunch of like redirects and other things where you end up on a page that in some cases was a kind of similar rewards program, but not about TikTok. It's like you're going to get a gift card if you do this. Or it was a page where they would ask you, oh, first you have to download this web browser or download this application. And at the end of the day, it's affiliate marketing because, well, one, you could inspect the URLs and see the telltale sort of parameters in there around affiliate numbers and that kind of thing. But two, they're trying to get you to take some type of action that at the end of the day, the affiliate marketer who ran that deceptive TikTok post, who got you to click, if they get you to download that application and install it, if they get you to sign up for that program, they're going to earn a commission. And that, of course, is at the core of affiliate marketing, which is drive people to a certain offer, get them to accept the offer, either purchase something, download something, sign up for something, and they earn a commission. And so that was, the core of the scheme was you thought you were getting paid to watch TikTok. And at the end of the day, you installed or did something that had nothing to do with TikTok, but it got somebody paid and tricked you into doing something that you otherwise wouldn't have done.
Yeah, I remember at various points people have said to me, oh, well, there's this like global conspiracy, all of these different folks, all of these different offers running everywhere. It's all part of this one big mega entity, but often it's a bunch of disconnected actors, often copying each other, copying tactics that they're seeing working.
Oh, yeah.
There was one recently where very similar thing that we found, very similar scam, 3 different versions of it, all different actors. One was essentially just some web page. The other was an HTTP track copied version of that or a prior other website, right, but essentially exactly the same. And then the third one was one where it was designed very well. Everything was obfuscated in different files. So obviously someone had said, oh, let's use the same creative tactic, but let's actually design it in such a way we hide where it's going to in a
Right.
very, defined way. So I think the affiliates, there's lots of different, versions of them, and they all copy each other. They try to find, what the other
Yes.
ones are doing and just replicate it, but they're often disconnected. And then the other thing that was interesting in your article that is also true is it's always very interesting to ask, does the end advertiser or affiliate company that's paying the affiliates of the network know what these affiliates are doing to generate those leads or those sales? Because often it's I have no idea, but come on.
I'm
often
shocked
you
to
do know.
discover there's gambling going on in this establishment. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you've seen all the different variants of that. I would guess.
I mean, that's the beauty of this model is like the plausible deniability is built into it. So if you are the company that at the end of the day has the product that is getting sold through these, these ads or whatever that affiliates are running, you work with the affiliate network typically, and the affiliate network has relationships with all these individual affiliate marketers. The affiliate network says, listen, we're going to pay $60 if you get somebody to sign up for this. And then they push that out to their affiliates, and they might have some suggested creative or things like that. And then the affiliates are off and running. And so when an individual affiliate does something, and they often have rules, like you can go on the affiliate marketplaces and see what the rules are of like, no deception, no celebrity ads, this, like all the rules that they shouldn't break. But the affiliates go out, they break all the rules, they run the crazy deceptive ads or what have you. They drive huge amounts of volume and conversions. Typically, oftentimes nobody says anything because it's working, right? And then if there is an issue and somebody discovers these ads, then the ads for that affiliate gets removed, but nobody ever goes up the chain. Like it's very rare to go up the chain. Like platforms don't typically go up the chain and say like this affiliate network we found has been a hotbed of millions and millions of deceptive ads, and we're going to send a cease and desist to them. It basically never happens. And so, the system is set up so that you as the affiliate network can say, well, we publish the rules and they're not allowed to run celebrity bait ads. And this person broke the rules and we're very disappointed in them. And meanwhile, they probably go and work with them again. And at the same time, even if like people complain to the network or the client is mad, the network can say, some people broke the rules. I'm really sorry. Or if, the FTC goes after the network or the FTC goes after the individual affiliates, the client can say, we set rules for this campaign and they broke them. And so, part of the design of it is everybody establishes the rules to keep it legal. But there is, in a lot of cases, not always, but in a lot of cases, everyone is willfully blind, knowing that the affiliates won't follow the rules. And this is the central thing, I think, of everything we're talking about. Undisclosed ads, clipping, affiliate stuff. The problem with the environment right now is that cheating works best. And so the incentives, why would you run legitimate real ads when you can do a whole bunch of undisclosed ads with the UGC campaign and get a better, return on your investment? Why would you, run your own traditional ads when you can go and launder it through an affiliate network and have them running tons of violative and illegal ads with celebrities that convert like crazy? And so as long as the incentives are that like cheating wins and cheating works, you're going to have lots of people cheating because, the auction nature, particularly in the ad world, is that the ad that performs better typically costs less. And if that's the case, and the stuff that breaks the rules performs better, unless the enforcement is really, really good and those violative ads don't have the time to perform better and earn money for you, like cheating is completely incentivized. So affiliate marketing to me is just like, like the best, most perfect example of that, where, the affiliates that are most successful are usually doing dodgy stuff, are usually cheating, are usually breaking the rules, but everybody knows that's actually how you win. And, last thing I'll add on that is like, I did a story about this happening in the health, like the Obamacare marketplace ads on Meta and Google. And I talked to people who run compliant ads for those. And some of them basically said, we just gave up on trying to do this business line of trying to get people signed up for Obamacare because everybody is cheating and they're winning. And our compliant ads will never compete with the ad that says the government is going to give you $500 a month for free. Like they can't win. It's impossible. And so it skews really the market a lot. And the affiliates know this. And they've set up this beautiful, plausible deniability system where like there's really not much in the way of accountability at all.
I think the only piece of optimism I have about this is that there's this real, to your point about cheating being celebrated, there's this real culture of, like that line from The Big Short, why are they confessing? No, they're not confessing, they're bragging. But there's a lot of this bragging that is happening on places like X. So I think if the government entities or ever wanted to actually enforce, I don't think they'd have that hard of a time finding a whole bunch of leads, because some of these people, these marketers, I call them marketers in quotes, are going to be, talking about some of the shady stuff they're doing. So I do think
they sell courses in some cases.
They do in some cases. So I'm hopeful that'll happen at some point. But I think we're coming to the end of our time together here, at least this time, Craig. This was, as always, illuminating. So where can people find you guys online?
Yeah, thank you. So our site is indicator.media. We're active on Blue Sky and LinkedIn, but we do have a free newsletter that people can sign up for. And every Friday, we give a rundown of news in the world of digital deception. I also have a little section on new and updated tools. We also try to cover, academic research in this area as well. So yeah, if you go to indicator.media, you can sign up for free for our Friday newsletter. And that's sort of where all of our work is now.
That's awesome. Well, I've been enjoying what you and Alexius have been doing for some time and encourage everyone to go check it out.